On the afternoon of March 12, 2003, the harsh glare of sodium streetlights begins to wash over State Street in Sandy, Utah. Alert citizens dialing 911 direct local police officers toward a busy sidewalk where three bizarre figures march in a tight formation. The trio wears heavy, dirt-caked robes, their faces hidden behind dark veils and crude wigs. Responding officers intercept the group, stepping into their path and forcing them to halt. One officer locks his focus on the shortest individual, a girl whose wide, terrified eyes dart in a frantic rhythm from behind cheap sunglasses and thick layers of fabric. When questioned, the girl refuses to break character, reciting archaic religious phrases, insisting her name is Augustine Marshall, and claiming she is a child of God. She denies her true identity with fierce conviction, guarding a terrible secret behind a wall of severe psychological conditioning. Yet, the persistent officers study the contours of her face, recognizing the faint remnants of a smile plastered across every billboard and national television station for 9 agonizing months. This tense sidewalk confrontation stands as the fragile culmination of a frantic nationwide manhunt. In the spring of 2002, the Federal Heights neighborhood of Salt Lake City stands as a fortress of serene, affluent domesticity, nestled flush against the rugged, towering foothills of the Watch Mountains. The community features wide, perfect lawns and grand, multi-story brick homes. This geographic positioning offers breathtaking views of the valley below, while a dense perimeter of oak and maple trees creates a natural barrier against the noise of the bustling city grid. Families leave bicycles on their front porches, and neighbors know one another by their first names, fostering an environment built on profound, unshakable trust. The Smart family resides near the edge of this idyllic subdivision, living a quiet, strict religious life anchored by their local church congregation. Their grand, light-colored brick house sits at the end of a long paved driveway, flanked by mature trees and a sprawling backyard that slopes upward into the untamed mountain brush. Inside this home, daily routines run with clockwork precision, revolving around schoolwork, community service, and shared evening meals. Parents Ed and Lois cultivate an atmosphere of structured discipline, ensuring their children remain shielded from the unpredictable chaos of the outside world. The sheer tranquility of Federal Heights projects an illusion of absolute security, masking the harsh reality that predators can walk the same pristine sidewalks as ordinary citizens. 14-year-old Elizabeth Smart represents the bright beating heart of this secure household. She is a dedicated middle school student, recognized by her teachers for her academic focus and quiet, polite demeanor. Beyond the classroom, Elizabeth spends hours practicing on a large golden pedal harp, filling the cavernous halls of the Smart home with cascading classical melodies. Her true passion, however, lies outdoors, where she spends her weekends horseback riding, developing a strong physical endurance and a deep connection to animals. The geography of her daily life is confined to safe, predictable zones, including the school campus, the church chapel, and the comfortable bedroom she shares with her 9-year-old sister Mary Catherine. This bedroom is located on the second floor of the expansive house, positioned at the end of a carpeted hallway, distant from the ground floor living areas. 2 twin beds anchor the room, separated by a modest distance, surrounded by scattered books, stuffed animals, and the typical innocent clutter of youth. A set of large windows lines the back wall of the bedroom, offering a clear view of the dense woods creeping down the mountainside. These windows symbolize the only fragile boundary between the warm, protected interior of the girls' sanctuary and the cold, sprawling wilderness outside. The evening of June 4, 2002, unfolds with the same comforting monotony that defines the family's entire existence. The summer heat lingers in the dry Utah air, prompting the family to leave several windows cracked open to catch the evening breeze. Elizabeth and Mary Catherine complete their nightly rituals. brushing their teeth in the shared bathroom before retreating down the long hallway to their bedroom. The house falls silent by midnight, with the heavy wooden front door locked and the interior lights extinguished. Downstairs, Ed and Lois sleep in a deep state of rest in their master suite, separated from their daughters by a sprawling floor plan and a central staircase. The physical distance between the parents' room and the girls' upstairs sanctuary creates an unintended, critical vulnerability in the home's defense. Outside, the deafening hum of cicadas echoes through the tall oak trees, masking any subtle sounds of movement in the dense underbrush. Shadows stretch across the manicured backyard, blending with the tree line to form an impenetrable wall of darkness. The neighborhood slumbers under the glow of sparse streetlights, oblivious to the reality that the illusion of their impenetrable sanctuary is about to shatter. The absolute security of the smart household fractures in the early morning hours of June 5, 2002. Around 1:15 in the morning, a tall figure emerges from the dense tree line of the Watch foothills, creeping down the slope toward the backyard. The intruder navigates the dark, familiar terrain of the property, bypassing the locked ground floor doors and scaling the exterior structure to reach the second level. He approaches the large open window of the bedroom shared by Elizabeth and Mary Catherine, where a flimsy wire mesh screen provides the only resistance. With a sharp, metallic click, the intruder uses a blade to slice a jagged opening through the screen, creating a gap wide enough to slip his hand inside. He undoes the interior latch, lifts the heavy glass pane, and steps over the sill into the dark, quiet room. The faint moonlight casts long, distorted shadows across the carpet as the stranger moves past the scattered toys and books. He stands over the first twin bed, towering above the sleeping form of 14-year-old Elizabeth. The scent of unwashed clothes and stale sweat fills the enclosed space, introducing an alien, terrifying presence into the childhood sanctuary. The intruder brandishes a cold steel knife, pressing the weapon close to the waking teenager to ensure total, immediate compliance. The sudden intrusion shatters the silence as the man issues a harsh, whispered command, threatening Elizabeth with permanent harm if she makes a sound. 9-year-old Mary Catherine jolts awake in the adjacent bed, her wide eyes adjusting to the darkness, just in time to witness the nightmare unfolding mere feet away. Paralyzed by a primal, consuming fear, the young girl forces her eyes half shut, feigning sleep while her heart hammers against her ribs. She watches without power as the tall, unkempt stranger grabs her older sister, forcing Elizabeth to rise from the mattress in her red silk jamas. The intruder directs the terrified teenager toward the bedroom door, keeping the blade angled toward her back. The floorboards groan under their combined weight as they exit the room, stepping into the dark, cavernous hallway. Mary Catherine listens to their muffled footsteps descending the main staircase, tracing their invisible path through the sprawling, silent house. She hears the faint metallic scrape of the kitchen door unlatching, followed by the dull thud of heavy wood closing behind them. The house plunges back into a suffocating, unnatural silence, leaving the 9-year-old alone in the dark, trapped in a state of sheer shock. The physical distance between her bed and her parents' room downstairs feels like an insurmountable abyss, keeping her frozen under her blankets for hours. Outside the home, the stranger forces Elizabeth across the manicured lawn, pushing her past the familiar boundaries of her backyard and into the untamed wilderness. They ascend the steep, rocky incline of the Wasatch foothills, leaving the soft glow of the neighborhood streetlights far behind in the valley. The harsh terrain tears at the teenager's bare feet and thin pavamas as the imposing figure marches her deeper into the desolate, unforgiving mountains. Back inside the Federal Heights residence, the slow passage of time tortures the paralyzed 9-year-old until she at last summons the courage to move. Just before dawn, Mary Catherine throws off her blankets, sprints down the long hallway, and descends the stairs in a desperate panic. She bursts into the master's suite, shaking her parents awake to deliver the chilling news that a man has taken her sister. And Lois rush up the stairs, their bare feet pounding against the hardwood floors, only to discover the empty twin bed and the sliced window screen. A frantic, chaotic search of the immediate property yields nothing but fresh, disturbed dirt near the edge of the woods. The parents dial 911, their voices trembling with disbelief as they report the impossible breach of their home. By sunrise, a small army of police cruisers floods the quiet streets of the subdivision, marking the explosive beginning of one of the largest missing person investigations in Utah history. The immediate aftermath of the home invasion sparks a massive, coordinated mobilization across the Salt Lake Valley. Thousands of civilian volunteers join local law enforcement agencies to comb the harsh, unforgiving terrain of the Watch Mountains. Helicopters slice through the dry summer air, their heavy rooters echoing against the steep granite cliffs while search dogs track scents through the dense oak brush. The search grid expands outward from the Federal Heights neighborhood, covering hundreds of miles of wilderness and urban sprawl. Yet, the horrifying reality remains hidden mere miles from the Smart family residence, tucked away within the dense foliage of Dry Creek Canyon. Deep inside this rugged, elevated territory, Brian David Mitchell and his wife Wanda Barzee construct a crude, idolated campsite concealed from the search helicopters buzzing directly overhead. The kidnappers force 14-year-old Elizabeth into a state of total physical submission, tethering her to a thick tree trunk with a heavy metal cable. The rough steel bites into her skin, anchoring her to the dirt and stripping away her fundamental freedom of movement. Mitchell subjects the teenager to relentless psychological conditioning, threatening to cause permanent catastrophic harm to her family if she cries out to the passing search parties. She listens to the desperate calls of volunteers echoing through the canyon, paralyzed by the terror instilled by her captors. The majestic mountain landscape transforms into a terrifying open-air prison, utilizing the steep geography to mask the daily torment occurring beneath the canopy. While the physical search stalls in the mountains, Salt Lake City detectives form a dedicated task force to analyze the internal dynamics of the Smart residence. Investigators adopt a standard procedural strategy, coming through employee records and compiling lists of individuals who possessed authorized access to the home. This logical methodology leads law enforcement to zero in on Richard Ricks, a former handyman with a lengthy criminal record who previously worked on the property. Detectives uncover glaring inconsistencies in his timeline and document a history of theft from the Smart family, elevating his status to the prime suspect. The investigation narrows its scope, pouring immense manpower and forensic resources into securing a confession from the incarcerated handyman. Police interrogate Rich for hours, demanding answers regarding the June breach of the bedroom window, yet he maintains his absolute innocence. The fierce media spotlight amplifies this specific law enforcement theory, plastering the face of the handyman across nightly news broadcasts and front pages. This intense tunnel vision creates a dangerous investigative blind spot, causing detectives to dismiss subtle external anomalies while waiting for the suspect to break. Detectives lock their entire strategy onto this single individual, convinced that the answers lie locked within his memories. However, a sudden catastrophic medical event derails the momentum of the high-profile interrogation. In August 2002, Richard Rich collapses inside his state prison cell, suffering a massive, fatal brain hemorrhage. His unexpected death creates a tragic factual dead end, obliterating the primary law enforcement theory and plunging the task force into a state of bureaucratic chaos. Without their central suspect, detectives must retreat and reconstruct their entire timeline from scratch, losing precious weeks of investigative progress. During this prolonged period of systemic stagnation, the unseen horror in the mountains intensifies. Mitchell subjects Elizabeth to severe dietary restriction and sleep deprivation, dismantling her physical strength and her sense of individual identity. The captor enforces extreme religious doctrines, declaring himself a prophet, and utilizing twisted scriptural interpretations to justify his daily psychological abuse. He demands absolute obedience, structuring every hour of the encampment around his bizarre dictatorial rituals. The passage of time brings a bitter chill to the high altitudes of the Wasatch Range, signaling the end of the brief Utah summer. The dropping temperatures render the exposed mountain campsite uninhabitable, forcing the captors to alter the physical geography of their crime. Mitchell dismantles the crude wilderness shelter, preparing to move his victims and exploit a massive vulnerability in interstate transit security. As winter tightens its grip on Utah, Mitchell orchestrates a brazen relocation, transporting Wanda Barzee and Elizabeth across state lines to the coastal sprawl of San Diego, California. The trio navigates the complex web of public transit and commercial bus lines, slipping past local authorities through a shocking failure of municipal awareness. To maintain absolute control in crowded urban environments, Mitchell forces his captive to wear heavy floor-length robes and thick facial veils. The suffocating layers of dark fabric serve as a portable prison, stripping away the distinct physical features of the missing teenager. Mitchell disguises the group as eccentric religious pilgrims, walking right down busy sidewalks and entering public commercial spaces. Ordinary citizens cast side glances at the bizarre trio, but societal norms regarding religious freedom deter anyone from demanding the removal of the veils. This collective hesitation represents a tragic social failure, allowing a dangerous predator to hide a high-profile victim in plain sight. The California sun beats down on the heavy garments, trapping the teenager inside a sweltering, dark cocoon as she walks inches away from potential rescuers. Mitchell continues his psychological dominance, warning Elizabeth that plainclothes police officers are actual assassins hired to eliminate her family. This severe conditioning ensures her silence, transforming every crowded street corner into an extension of her initial captivity. Back in Salt Lake City, the critical turning point of the investigation emerges not from microscopic forensic evidence, but from the delayed realization of a traumatized child. In October 2002, 9-year-old Mary Catherine sits reading a book in her home, far removed from the ongoing police procedures. A sharp memory pierces through her shock, linking the harsh, whispered voice from the dark bedroom to a specific face from the past. She rushes to her parents, revealing that the intruder was a drifter who called himself Emmanuel. The Smart family recognizes the name, recalling a transient man they had hired for a single day of roof and yard work months prior to the home invasion, and Lois relay this explosive intelligence to the primary detective task force, expecting an immediate, massive tactical response. Frustrated by months of dead ends and rigid bureaucratic protocols, some investigators dismiss the childhood memory, choosing to chase other analytical data. The family battles against this institutional skepticism, hiring independent composite artists to generate a visual profile of the mysterious laborer. In early 2003, law enforcement matches the alias to the true identity of Brian David Mitchell, an excommunicated religious extremist with a history of erratic behavior. Authorities release a detailed forensic sketch to local and national television networks, blanketing the media landscape with the distinct features of the true predator. This delayed decisive action shatters the previous tunnel vision, pivoting the entire nationwide manhunt toward a very specific dangerous target. On the morning of March 12, 2003, Brian David Mitchell orchestrates the brazen return of his captives to the very state where the grueling ordeal began. The trio abandons the coastal anonymity of Southern California and travels back to the sprawling, high-altitude urban grid of the Salt Lake Valley. They emerge onto the concrete sidewalks of State Street in Sandy, Utah. a massive, multi-lane commercial artery choked with loud midday traffic and exhaust fumes. Strip malls, car dealerships, and fast food restaurants flank the pedestrian walkways, creating a chaotic environment entirely devoid of privacy or shelter. The harsh glare of the midday sun beats down on the pavement as the three figures march in a tight, highly disciplined formation. Mitchell leads the way, flanked by the two women draped in dark, heavy layers of fabric that drag across the dirty concrete and collect city grime. Despite the bustling commercial surroundings, their bizarre, archaic appearance stands out in stark contrast to the modern suburban backdrop, drawing sharp, inquisitive glances from passing motorists. Weeks of intense national media coverage featuring the distinct composite sketch of the suspected predator finally yield a critical, undeniable result. Two different citizens, alert and hyper-aware of the nationwide manhunt, scan the faces on the sidewalk and immediately recognize the sharp facial contours of the tall man. These vigilant bystanders grab their cellular telephones, dialing 911 to report the exact geographic coordinates of the wandering group to local emergency dispatchers. The dispatch center rapidly processes the critical intelligence, broadcasting a priority alert to municipal patrol units navigating the congested suburban sectors. The invisible net constructed by months of desperate investigative work and widespread public awareness campaigns rapidly tightens around the arrogant captor in broad daylight. Within minutes of the radio transmission, multiple marked police cruisers swarm the busy commercial corridor, cutting aggressively through the heavy traffic to intercept the targets. The officers brake hard near the curb, stepping out of their vehicles and positioning themselves directly in the path of the approaching trio to block their forward momentum. Law enforcement personnel issue loud, firm commands, forcing Mitchell to halt his march on the busy pavement and severing his physical control over the immediate environment. The seasoned officers instantly recognize the extreme psychological dominance the tall man exerts over his companions, prompting an immediate tactical separation of the individuals. They pull Mitchell and Wanda Barzee away from the shortest figure, isolating the younger girl near the metallic side of a parked patrol car. The physical geography of the sidewalk transforms into a tense, makeshift interrogation zone, isolating the victim from her tormentors for the first time in 9 agonizing months. A heavy odor of unwashed garments and stale sweat radiates from the girl, painting a grim picture of extreme physical deprivation and long-term exposure to the elements. She stands rigid against the cruiser, wrapped in a cheap gray wig, dark sunglasses, and a thick facial veil explicitly designed to erase her identity. The officers peer through the obscure layers of fabric, searching for any distinct facial markers that match the missing teenager from the Federal Heights neighborhood. Her eyes dart wildly in a rhythmic, uncontrollable panic, reflecting the absolute terror ingrained by her captor's constant, horrific threats against her family. Mitchell watches the interaction from a distance, radiating a furious arrogance, entirely confident that his relentless psychological conditioning will hold the girl silent. The police recognize the extreme fragility of the situation, knowing they must carefully dismantle months of severe brainwashing right there on the noisy public concrete. Officer Victor Quezada steps forward, utilizing a calm, measured tone to pierce through the heavy wall of religious indoctrination surrounding the terrified girl. He questions the veiled individual about her true identity, but she immediately recites the fabricated protective narrative Mitchell forced her to memorize during her captivity. She insists her name is Augustine Marshall, declaring herself a child of God and fiercely denying any connection to the missing child from Salt Lake City. The deep psychological scars manifest in her trembling voice, as she genuinely believes the plainclothes officers are actual assassins hired to eliminate her family if she speaks the truth. Quezada refuses to accept the obvious deception, pressing her with gentle persistence while noting the familiar shape of her visible features beneath the cheap disguise. He asks the ultimate question, looking directly into her frantic eyes and demanding to know one final time if she is Elizabeth Smart. The heavy silence of the standoff hangs over the roaring traffic of State Street as the teenager battles the intense internal conditioning forced upon her. The protective psychological shell finally cracks under the weight of the truth, allowing a sliver of her actual identity to break free from the dark mental prison. Instead of giving a direct confirmation, the terrified girl utilizes an archaic biblical phrase, whispering the chilling words, "Thou sayest." This indirect, archaic admission stands as a haunting testament to the severe religious extremism she endured, yet it provides the exact legal confirmation the officers require. The officers immediately secure Mitchell and Barzee in heavy steel handcuffs, bringing the grueling 9-month abduction to a definitive, monumental conclusion. The immediate aftermath of the sidewalk rescue triggers a massive wave of profound relief that ripples from the local Sandy Police precinct to national news desks across the country. Law enforcement agents transport Elizabeth to the secure headquarters, providing a quiet, controlled environment far removed from the sensory overload of the commercial highway. Officers gently assist the teenager in removing the heavy suffocating veils and the cheap wig, shedding the physical symbols of her long traumatic captivity. Within hours, Ed and Lois Smart rush through the double doors of the police station, weeping uncontrollably as they pull their missing daughter into a desperate, tight embrace. The incredible reunion defies the grim statistical realities of long-term abductions, proving the immense value of relentless media campaigns, composite sketches, and community vigilance. While the family begins the long, arduous process of psychological healing, the criminal justice system takes absolute forceful control over the perpetrators. Federal agents and state detectives process Brian David Mitchell and Wanda Barzee, stripping away their religious garments, capturing booking photographs, and placing them in standard prison uniforms. The arrogant captors face a massive array of severe federal and state charges, ranging from aggravated kidnapping to unlawful flight across state lines. Meanwhile, a specialized forensic task force returns to the rugged terrain of Dry Creek Canyon, systematically dismantling the remnants of the hidden mountain campsite. Investigators photograph and collect the rusted metal cables, the crude shelters, and the scattered debris, building an impenetrable evidentiary record to guarantee a conviction. The massive investigation successfully transitions from a frantic blind manhunt into a meticulous, evidence-based legal prosecution designed to ensure the predators never walk a public street again. Despite the overwhelming physical evidence collected by the forensic teams, the complex legal proceedings plunge the victims into a frustrating, years-long bureaucratic quagmire. Defense attorneys representing Brian David Mitchell utilize rigid psychiatric protocols to stall the trial, arguing that his bizarre religious delusions render him entirely mentally incompetent to face a judge. Mitchell actively exploits these specific legal loopholes, singing loud hymns in the courtroom and shouting disruptive, nonsensical prophecies to halt the judicial progress. This deliberate, calculated manipulation forces the court to mandate extensive, prolonged stays at the Utah State Hospital, agonizing the family with endless systemic delays. The strict legal rules regarding mental competency evaluations prioritize the procedural rights of the defendant, creating a glaring systemic failure that forces the true victims to wait years for a resolution. Wanda Barzee initially follows her husband's disruptive tactics, but the harsh isolation of federal custody eventually breaks her absolute loyalty to his twisted doctrines. She agrees to cooperate with federal prosecutors, providing chilling, detailed testimony regarding the daily operations of the mountain encampment and the specific methods of control. In 2009, Barzee officially pleads guilty to her role in the abduction, securing a 15-year federal sentence and a concurrent 15-year state sentence. The presiding judge credits her for 7 years already served during the prolonged legal delays, establishing a concrete timeline for her eventual return to society. She completes her mandated sentence and walks free in September 2018, a highly controversial conclusion dictated by the rigid mathematics of plea agreements and federal sentencing guidelines. The final measure of moral justice arrives when the federal court definitively rules that Brian David Mitchell is entirely competent to stand trial for his crimes. Prosecutors systematically dismantle his complex insanity defense, proving that his elaborate religious persona served merely as a calculated, deceptive mask to facilitate his predatory actions and evade suspicion. During the harrowing federal trial in late 2010, Elizabeth takes the witness stand, facing her former tormentor with unbreakable composure in the packed courtroom. She details the exact mechanics of her captivity, stripping away Mitchell's perceived power and exposing the brutal reality of his manipulative, cowardly nature to the jury. The jury deliberates with absolute clarity, evaluating the forensic evidence and the powerful testimony before returning a swift verdict of guilty on all federal kidnapping and unlawful transportation charges. In 2011, a federal judge sentences Brian David Mitchell to life in prison without the possibility of parole, permanently neutralizing his threat to society. The heavy steel doors of a maximum security federal penitentiary close behind the arrogant predator, fulfilling the ultimate promise of the criminal justice system. Elizabeth Smart rejects the quiet role of a defeated victim, transforming her unimaginable trauma into a powerful lifelong mission of advocacy and public education. She becomes a leading national voice for child safety, creating foundations, authoring books, and pushing for vital legislative changes to protect vulnerable populations across the country. Her incredible resilience redefines the entire narrative of survival, and in 2026, a major Netflix documentary chronicles her definitive story, cementing her triumph over evil.